Hey, what's going on, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Backwoods Escape, where we test out gear that you can use in your next outdoor adventure. So, different setting. Usually I'm in my garage where all my gear is, but today I'm talking about something that isn't in my garage. It's actually on my phone and on my desktop, and that is the Gaia GPS mapping software. Now, this software honestly is life-saving. I don't know what I would do without it in this day and age. It really is a game changer in terms of planning your trips, being safe, recording data, all that kind of good stuff. And it perfectly syncs between your mobile phone and your desktop. So any changes you make on your desktop will go on your mobile phone, and then any changes you make on your mobile phone, it goes on your desktop. So it's perfectly interchangeable with both of your devices. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to primarily be walking you through the desktop version, because usually when you're planning out your trip, that's where you're going to do the majority of your research, and then you download the data onto your phone, and then that's what you're going to use out in the wild. And the great thing is that this works even when you don't have reception, which is almost all the time when you're somewhere very remote. So you don't have to be concerned about losing reception. It works just on airplane mode because you're going to download the data beforehand and you will be good to go. Another thing you might be wondering is this actually really necessary? If I'm going to be sticking to trails, what is the point of having this mapping software that I have to pay for? Well, guess what? I actually thought the same thing too. I'm like, there's no point in doing this. I'm sticking to trails, is totally fine. But once you get to a lot of these trails, they're not all maintained. There's some trails that were made literally decades ago and they haven't been touched since. And so it's actually very difficult to see these trails, find them, make sure that you're going along the right path. I have veered off of trails all the time, and then I realize I'm actually 1 to 2 miles away from where I'm actually supposed to be, because I think I'm following the right trail, but then I'm not. I realize I'm following a game trail made by animals and not the actual trail that I'm going to be on. So yes, obviously, like, well-maintained, very big trails, you're not going to need a mapping software like this. But if you're out in the remote wilderness, a lot of those trails are very difficult to follow, and so having this type of software honestly is life-saving. So without further ado, let's do a tour of the desktop version. All right, so here we are in the desktop version of Gaia GPS. Once you have an account, this is what your interface will look like. So here I am. This is an area called the Sespe Wilderness in California, just a random spot that I decided to choose. I've personally never been here. I've driven by it on the highways many times, but I've actually never entered it. So just figured it'd be a fun exercise to use right here. So let's go ahead and start with the tools. And one thing I will say about Gaia GPS is that it's very user-friendly. There's other mapping softwares out there that it honestly feels like you need a PhD in order to figure it out. That's not the case with Gaia GPS. It is very, very simple, user-friendly, and easy to follow. So first, it starts off over here with overlays. Here you get to choose what actually shows up on your map. So I have a couple different waypoints, as you can see right there. I can turn that off if I want. If I don't want it to be visible, I can turn off routes as well, tracks. It just kind of depends on how much information you want to be shown on the interface at any given time. You can go ahead and choose that. One interesting one is public tracks. If I turn that on, you see all these lines here that start showing up. I'm actually going to circle back to that in just a minute, but I'm going to leave it off for right now. Then you have your layers. So the default layer is the Gaia topo, right? That's what we're looking at this right here. But you can also add other ones, right? So if you feel like you're going to be near some private land and you want to make sure you're not invading that private land, you can go ahead and click on this private land layer, and then it's going to show you who owns the land that you're going to be here, right? So all of this here is owned by the United States. So, don't really have to worry about, trespassing onto private land there. But obviously, if we keep on going down here, you'll see the actual ownership, private owners here for this type of land. So if I happen to be hiking along this road right here, this trail right here, I'll want to be careful that I'm not trespassing onto private land at any given point. So that's when that one is useful. There's also satellite imagery, as you can see right here. So if you don't want to see topo view and you want to see what it would look like essentially on Google Earth or Google Maps, you can definitely do that here with the satellite imagery. It gives you kind of a good idea of the landscape. This here, you can tell that it's very dry landscape. There's not a whole lot of trees going on, so it's mostly just brush going on here. So it gives you a preview of what you might be seeing in terms of sites. One fun one that I actually really like is the historic topo map from 1930. So if I go ahead and click on that, this is going to change to a historic topo. And the reason that I really like using this one, first and foremost, it's just kind of fun to see how maps look back in the day. But there's going to actually be a lot of things that are pointed out in these historic topo maps that no longer exist on modern topo maps. And so sometimes you'll find information about a certain spring that maybe isn't labeled in a modern topo map, or a mountain peak, or even a mine and stuff like that. So really, really cool way to kind of not only see how things were before, but you actually just might find some things you may want to check out or avoid by looking at these historic topo maps. And then beyond that, there's a lot of different options right here. I'm not going to go through each and every single one, but you can do a combination of satellite and topo. If you are hunting, you can do the hunt zones right here for deer, elk, or whatever else it might be. You can choose state refugees, river charts, public land charts, Nat Geo trails illustrated. This is also kind of like a pretty neat one as well that you can go ahead and play around with. So, but for now, we're going to go ahead and just stick with the default of Gaia Topo. And then now you can start doing whatever it is that you want to do in terms of planning and mapping, right? So really one of the most useful tools is waypoints, right? So a waypoint is just something that you want to jot down onto the map. That way, once you're out in the area, you know where to find it, so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and just, I'm going to zoom in right here, and I can drop a waypoint, and it comes out right here like this, and I can drag it and put it wherever I want right here. So let me just say that I'm going to put it right there. So I can give this a name. So you can see here that there's a creek right here. And let's just say I had already been there and I saw that it was actually running, right? So I can say running water, right? Depending on time of year, all kind of stuff. And it's going to give you the elevation of the waypoint and the exact coordinates. And then you can add any notes, and you can say something like was here in May and water was still running, something like that, right? And then you can customize what the waypoint actually looks like, right? So you can actually, you can use emojis if you want. Personally, I've never done that. An emoji, wouldn't really be useful for my purposes or anything like that. I tend to kind of stick with these ones right here, which are provided by Gaia, right? So I can then come in here and just type in water. And then here, right, that's their symbol for a body of water, or I can just do the regular water right there. That's a waterfall right there. But I'll do body of water since I'm saying that it's a creek right there. And then I can modify the color of the border right here, right? So here, if I want it to be a lime green or a blue or brown or orange, that is where all of that goes, right? So I can then click on save right there. And now that point is saved, and it'll sync seamlessly with my phone, so that when I'm out there, right, I can figure out how to get to this creek or where this is, right? And there's other things as well, right? So let's just come here. I'm going to drop another random waypoint. Let me put this right over here, actually. This is a very remote campground, right? I don't know if it's maintained or whatever it is, et cetera, but I can do here possible sleeping spot, and then I would mark it with the tent label, and then I can change this to whatever color that I want. So like I said, waypoints are very useful for doing all of your planning. Another thing you can do is use the route feature, which is really great. So I'm just going to come in here, I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to start clicking the spots on the route that I want to take. Right, so it's going this way. And you want to make sure you're selecting the actual trail itself. I mean, I could just randomly, point this way, but it's usually most useful if you're sticking to the trails right here. And you'll see it actually already kind of automatically selects. You're just gonna have to hover over the trail and make sure you're in the right spot. There we go. And once you're done, so let's just say I want to go up to here. There we go. So I can give this a name. So this is the Little Mutua Trail, or Mutau Trailhead. So I guess I'll call it that. Mutau hike. And now you might be thinking, okay, well, what's the point of doing this if you can already see the trail that is on the map for you, right? Why would you go there and annotate it or mark it like this? And the reason is because of the data that you get back, right? So here, obviously, yes, I can see the trail goes from here to here, but I can't see the distance. I don't know what the elevation change is or anything like that. I get all of that once I've created the trail, right? So from this point to that point, it is 3.14 miles. I'm going to be ascending 1,600 feet, and I can tell it's going to be uphill the whole way, right? It keeps going and going and going. There is pretty much no downhill portions, so that's something that I'm gonna have to be mentally and physically prepared for, to go uphill for 3.14 miles. I can add any notes right there. Right, we saw lots of wildlife or anything like that. And there's this public sharing mode, right? So if you click on this, then anyone with a Gaia account will then be able to see the information of the route that you created. So I'm gonna go ahead and just click, we can pretend I clicked save right here, but I'm gonna click cancel because I don't actually want this route to be saved on my account. But going all the way back here, and let me zoom out. If you recall, I did talk about the overlays right here, and you click on public tracks. Here we go. So this is the same thing we just did, but from data of other people who made their route public. So if I click on this right here, here are all the routes that match that. And so you can see this one was added in 2021 of November. This one was added in February of 2020, 2017, 2014. And I can click on this and I can see the data of this person's routes. You know, this is 31 miles, an ascension of 4,953, 40 hours total time. I can see all the different elevation changes, right? This person went up and down, up and down, up and down all the way. It was a little bit of a wild ride for them. So that when you select that public option, that's what ends up happening with your routes. People can then see the information that you created. So really cool, fun, and useful tools, but I'm gonna go back and turn it off for now. You can also highlight areas. So let me go ahead and drag this right here. And let's just say I want to highlight here. So you're gonna select, I'm gonna make a little triangle. Perfect. So then I'm going to go over here and maybe I just want to say landslides, right? I walked by here and there was lots of landslides and you want to be careful, right? Something like that, right? You can just point it out, add notes, what time of year you were there. Again, you can go back to sharing this information publicly, right? If I am actually pointing out something that I saw that was dangerous, then, you know, obviously I actually would want to make this public, so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and click cancel right there. And then you can import data from other websites as well. So if you do have multiple mapping software, then you can import data from somewhere else easily into here as well. The final thing that I want to point out, there are lots of other features in here, but I kind of just want to show you the main ones that I use the most heavily and that I think are probably the most useful to you, is that you can also look at things in 3D. So looking at things from a top level perspective like this, yeah, sure, it's great. Obviously, it's very useful. But if you want to get for a little bit more familiar with the lay of the land, you can go into 3D mode, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click on that right here. And it's going to switch me to 3D mode right here. And then I can just toggle this and I can get like a really good sense of, you know, what the land is going to be like here. You know, what does it look like from this direction and that direction, so on and so forth, which is really cool. Very useful feature so that you can kind of have an expectation of what it is that you're going to be looking at once you actually arrive in this area as well. All right, so there you have it. That's how you work it on desktop. And one quick thing I wanted to point out for the mobile version is that we saw here that you can record a track beforehand. But what if you're already out in the wild and you want to start recording a track that you then want to go home and analyze later? Well, you can definitely do that. You'll see right here in the upper corner, it says record right there. I promise, it's a green button. I can't get it to focus right there for some reason, but you hit that when you are on a hike, like, hey, I'd really like to know the data about this trail. I want to know how long it is, what the elevation change and all kind of stuff. So you just hit that record track button and then you're going to essentially do the same thing. You're going to give it a name and any other information that you want to provide, and then it'll be saved onto your phone. And then once you get back to an area that has reception, it'll then also go onto your desktop variation as well. Another quick note I wanted to add is that it actually is safe, and I would recommend to have multiple mapping softwares. As much as I love Gaia GPS, I do use it in conjunction with another mapping software, which I'm happy to review as well in a later video. They do have a couple of differences in there, so depending on what I'm trying to do, I may use the other mapping software or I may use Gaia. But what I will say about Gaia is that it has never, ever, ever glitched out on me. It is always 100% reliable. The other platform that I use from time to time, it may have some more robust features to it in comparison to Gaia, but it does glitch out on me from time to time. So if I can only choose one, I would actually actually stick with Gaia. I've been nothing but impressed with this type of software, and I highly recommend it. So as always, I will have the link for Gaia down for you below. If you have any questions about this software, just let me know. And if there's any other pieces of gear or software that you would like for me to review, just let me know in the comments. I will be happy to check it out and give you my honest thoughts. That's all I got for you today. I will see you next time.